it out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 623rd edition of Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and Nancy Wolf, the amazing Nancy Wolf. I used to say the amazing Tom Fennell, but you know, you're amazing. He's amazing for different reasons.
Yeah.
And this is an aggregation of news. Today is the 8th of May. And this aggregation starts on the 1st and ends on the 7th. And it comes from my website, which is geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. You can go there and follow things, or you can go down on the screen. If you can scroll down on the screen, not everybody can, but if you can, you'll find a file down there that you can click on that will give you basically everything that we're talking about and not much else. And it is going to be called tinyurl. Yeah, tinyurl.com/EnergyWeek623 or something like that. There you go. So we're going to start on Thursday, the 1st of May, and I think maybe we should jump right in unless I'm missing something.
I just realized I hadn't told you this, but I was a celebrity sighting at the van annual meeting. That just happened last week. Someone saw me and recognized me from Energy Week. So I just needed to, I'm saying it live, so,
You know, when I started this show, the first year that it was going, which was, probably wasn't the first year, but it was within a few months of the time it started, because it started in November of 2013. I started getting homeless people in Brattleboro asking me for signatures. They wanted to have my signature because I was on television. And but it's always something to be famous locally.
Amazing. It's like I recognize you from TV.
Yeah. Okay. Our first item.
Yes, of course.
We have a picture of offshore wind power, and this is from Renews.
Yes, so the headline here is IPF 2025, Canada to roll out 2.5 gigawatt offshore auction.
Canada is ready to welcome offshore wind developers jilted by U.S. federal policy and will launch a 2.5 gigawatt lease auction later this year. Attendees at IPF, which is in, I don't remember. Do you know?
I don't remember either.
Okay, let's just proceed. 2025 in Virginia heard this. Nova Scotia aims to launch a lease auction of its own this fall. There will be a need to export power to the United States. And I got to tell you, this is astonishing.
It's hilarious.
It would be, except that it's putting us way far behind.
It's stupid. It's just silly. It's obvious. It's what I wrote as my notes today is the U.S. will isolate itself entirely. Dark days are ahead for every industry.
Unless somebody decides to do things differently than they have said.
Yes. But at this, like, as they say with a tarot card reading, if nothing changes, this is our trajectory is very dark.
Basically, now I've looked. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission keeps tabs on what they expect to be put on and taken off. New capacity put on the grid in the next 3 years, high probability capacity, that's the high probability is what I pay attention to, because the total includes stuff that is pie in the sky. You know, we're going to put up a huge grid, you know, huge whatever, but it's being put up where there's no transmission lines or whatever the problem is, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that, but they have the high probability additions and the retirements. And for nuclear power, 0 in both over the next 3 years. There's nothing that is scheduled to be put online. For natural gas, well, I should say for coal, 1 megawatt, which means somebody's got they're changing the capacity of some plant, is probably what it is. 23 gigawatts being withdrawn because it's getting old and being retired. As for natural gas, there's about 16.5 gigawatts being added and about 15 gigawatts being removed. So the total of natural gas is a net 1,500 megawatts. The total for fossil fuels, all fossil fuels, is going to be more than 20 gigawatts negative. And that's fossil fuels plus nuclear combined. And in the meantime, you've got companies like Google saying that they're going to finance new nuclear reactors because they need the electricity. And so what happens? The President of the United States says, well, we're going to cancel these offshore projects, and we're not going to allow any more leasing of onshore projects for wind power. So what does that mean? It means basically that half of the wind power that was scheduled to be put on, of which there's a lot, is no longer scheduled to be put on, but FERC hasn't put that into their data yet.
You know, this reminds me of say, like a overdraft fee. Like when you mess too many things up at once, and then you have to pay all these fees. Like that's what removing all this funding is. It's like paying all these fees, and then you're going to have to pay all these fees because you did physical things.
Yes.
And you made some changes, so you have to deal with the blowback, like all the organization, everyone involved in the creation of these plans and all of this, all of that work that cost money to create.
That's exactly right. And it's very worrisome. I don't see how we're going to get out of this, except I see 89.5 gigawatts of solar power added during that time. And if that goes on, and more, which could happen if the United States very rapidly builds some solar factories for solar panels. Now, this brings me to another thing. One of the biggest problems with development is the transmission lines. Our transmission system is too old, and I'm going to maintain that our transmission system is the wrong paradigm. It's just wrong. What we need is distributed electricity.
Which there's a I want to talk about that later.
We will. Okay, I'm going to go on.
Yeah.
That's a nice picture. Jersey, not New Jersey.
Yes, that's
Jersey.
I'll tell you a story about that soon.
Okay, I want to hear your story. I have a story too, but go ahead.
So this is from the BBC, and the headline is Jersey's first solar farm switched on.
Jersey's first solar farm was switched on and will provide enough energy to power 600 homes. There's a lot more than 600 homes on Jersey. An 11-acre site has nearly 7,500 panels and is expected to power 14% of St. Clement's homes. I should pronounce that like it's French, but I don't know how to pronounce French. Jersey Electricity's chief executive, Chris Ambler, said the array was important for the island's energy independence. Jersey is thought of as part of the UK, but it isn't. It is I don't know what it's classified as. It belongs to it acknowledges the Queen of England. It's got its own government. It's protected by the UK, but it has its own government. And you have...
My high school physics teacher is from Jersey.
Oh, really?
The Isle of Jersey. And so I know, though there are maybe more facts than... but it was always this joke about how nobody knows. So anyway, it's my high school physics teacher. So he was great.
I have been on Jersey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
In 1962, I arrived on Jersey in a DC-3 airplane. And hours later, I took off, probably on the same DC-3 airplane for Exeter. And the only thing I saw was the airport. I would have liked to have seen that castle. That would have been fun.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Okay, let's go on.
Wow, that's good.
We have a picture of coffee and an item from ABC News.
Yes, the headline here is climate change is making coffee more expensive. Tariffs likely will too.
Losses from heat and drought have cut coffee production forecasts for Brazil and Vietnam, the world's largest growers. The result is increased coffee prices. Man, I'm seeing coffee prices at $12.50 for a pound. Anyway. Now prices in the U.S. will be even higher than the rest of the world because coffee producers face U.S. tariffs.
Yes.
Where does all this money go for the tariffs?
Oh, who knows?
I have a theory about that.
Yeah.
It doesn't go anywhere because the people who are producing this stuff won't ship it to the United States.
Right. Yeah. No one's going to actually pay. So yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's just, that's why I say it just keeps us insular. Just keeps everything inside.
Yes.
This is terrible news.
I agree. It's terrible news. And I've been doing stuff with coffee recently that I had never thought of doing. I found out that organic coffee has chlorogenic acid in it.
Right.
I mentioned that before. And, I've been using I rinse my coffee maker in water, of course. What else would I use? This gives me a bunch of coffee grounds and water all mixed together, and I filter the coffee grounds out, and they're going to be used for compost, but the liquid is being put on plants that have scale on them or other insect problems. And over the winter, the plants I put it on, the insect problems, the scale just went away. I didn't have to rub down the leaves or anything like that. And the reason is because coffee plants make chlorogenic acid when they're attacked by insects, which will only happen if they're organic, because otherwise the insects are sprayed and killed, and that's the end of that. So we should probably move on. I like that picture.
It's a nice cup of coffee.
Yeah. Okay. Clean Technica. Here's a young woman charging an EV.
Yeah, and the headline here is Europe EV sales report.
Some 365,000 plug-in vehicles were registered in Europe in March, rising 22% year over year in an overall market that was up just 3%. There was a steep fall in diesel sales, down 27% year over year to 7%. I will get back to that in a moment. That's the share now is 7%. Petroleum is also in a death spiral.
Agree.
Petrol vehicles saw their sales fall by 20% year on year. Their share dropped to 28%. I have said percent too many times.
Yes.
And I have this note. You need to think about this or you won't understand it. It's a really good example of why a flag goes up whenever the word percent is used. When 9.6% last year drops by 27%, it gets to 7%.
Yeah.
efficiency has its own flags, and other things do too. But you have to bear this in mind.
Yeah.
Percent is a weird. Whenever you hear percent, just remember you have to stop, you have to think, or you might as well take everything you're hearing and throw it away.
Because it's what is it of? Like, what's the percent of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember during the gas crisis of what year was it? 1972, 73, whatever, I forget. The gasoline producers were making much more money than they had the previous year. And there was a reporter who was livid because this gas company was making its profits had increased by 750%. And he was standing in front of their main office, which was a building that was, it looked like it had a 2-car garage on the first floor and an apartment on the second floor. And that was the office of this was a tiny company. What were the percentages? What were the profits that went up 750%? If it was 1 cent per share, well, then it went up to 8.5% per share. You have to do better than that. You have to figure out what's happening and express that. And we're falling behind, so I have to go on. Do you have anything on that?
No, I very much underline petrol is also in a death spiral because that's kind of the theme here.
So who is the United States going to sell all this gas and oil we get from drilling, drilling?
We're not. I mean, that's what I mean. It seems that we're not doing that.
This picture is Leslie Beyer. The article is from Renews.
Yeah, the headline here is Trump official accepts empire order is dangerous.
Leslie Beyer, nominated as Assistant Secretary of the Interior, Lands and Minerals Management, and a bunch of other stuff too, agreed with Senator Angus King at the confirmation hearing that the administration's decision to issue a stop order for Equinor's 810 megawatt Empire Wind project off the coast of New York sends a negative signal. Now, this woman was, what qualifies her to be the Assistant Secretary of the Interior, Lands, Minerals, and so forth and so forth and so forth, 4 agencies within the Interior Department. She was the CEO of an Energy Workforce and Technology Council from 2014 to 2023. That is a gas and oil lobbyist group.
Yeah. I mean, that's correct. Yes, that makes sense.
Obviously, she's a very smart woman. And I don't know that she's qualified to
run all of this?
Run all of that, yeah. I mean, she wasn't, I shouldn't complain about her because she might be, first of all, a wonderful human being, and second of all, extremely well backed in terms of her education and so forth. I don't know, but there's got to be something there, and I think what I'm complaining about is not her in particular, but about everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody in the administration. I have spoken a number of times to Tulsi Gabbard. She spoke back to me. I mean, this is a two-way conversation. I like her. I admire her. I admire her for a number of reasons. And I'm not altogether sure that she has the background to be in at cabinet level on intelligence. Now, I'm not saying she doesn't. I'm just
she might. I mean, yeah.
Well, her department just issued something that I thought was really interesting, where basically they were saying that the Venezuelan gangs were not organized or administered by the Venezuelan government, and in fact, it's quite counter to that. And that was her department. But I don't know what her involvement in that was. Okay, we are at a picture of Brighton, ABC News. By the way, the sign over that thing, you can see the word Brighton. Under it is Palace
Pike.
Pike.
Pike. Or Park? Pink? Palace?
Pier.
Pier.
It's Pier, yes.
Pier.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So the headline here is UK could hit 30 degrees Celsius at earliest recorded point in a year.
Okay, the UK is set for its hottest day of the year so far on Thursday. This has already happened. And the high could hit 30 degrees Celsius, which is 86 degrees Fahrenheit, at the earliest recorded date, forecasters said. The heat follows one of the warmest and driest Aprils on record. This is bad timing for those who wish to bask in the sun over a 3-day weekend, which is what was coming up. I lived in the UK in 1962. That was a long time ago. We lived in a house in Devon, not very far from the English Channel, and the temperature inside that house did not go above 65 degrees all summer long. It didn't have a refrigerator, by the way, but it did have a pantry, and you could store things in the pantry where they would stay safe overnight. No. So you'd put milk in a pantry where it was going to be 60 degrees or whatever. Okay. Anything from you on that?
It's a bit scary. That's
it's
my reaction. It's a bit scary.
It's a bit scary. I had an English girlfriend, and she said when the temperature goes above 80 degrees, we all go on strike. That's what it was. Okay. We're up to Saturday, May 3rd, and we have another article from Clean Technica.
Yeah, so with a technology license from MIT and NREL in hand, Comstock Fuels aims to produce jet fuel from lignin.
Yeah. The picture there is poplar lignin oil, which, by the way, is lignin that has been altered somewhat, and SAF, which is sustainable air fuel. It is an ideal complement to Comstock Fuels' own technologies, just one refining step to upgrade lignin from biomass into aromatic hydrocarbon molecules needed to produce a drop-in synthetic aviation fuel. SAF is synthetic aviation fuel. Lignin, which is in the middle of these three, this is lignin oil, which means that it's been a little bit processed. Lignin is a major component in a waste material called black liquor, which is produced when you make paper. And when you make it from wood, I should say. Wood, you have cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin are the major components of wood. You're taking out the hemicellulose and the lignin, and the cellulose is what you want. And all of these things, by the way, are polymers. And you'd think they're polymers, they're plastics. Yes, that's true. And you can take lignin and you can make it into plastic. And it's a pretty easy step. But here they're making it into aviation fuel. And the stuff that was hard to get rid of and would be thrown away in the past is being suggested as an aviation fuel. Okay, I'm going to go on. Is that all right?
Yeah, let's go on.
Okay. We have ABC News, and the note that I have on this bird is not everyone in Hawaii is a bird.
This is one resident of Hawaii, just one. So the headline here is Hawaiian lawmakers raise state's hotel tax to help islands cope with climate change.
Hawaiian lawmakers passed novel legislation, nothing like it had ever been done before, that will increase the state's lodging tax to raise money for environmental protection and strengthening defenses against natural disasters fueled by climate change. Governor Josh Green indicated that he will sign that bill. So,
it's good.
Yeah. My parents lived in Hawaii, and they had to leave because of mean people. My father was an engineering officer on a destroyer mine layer that was in Pearl Harbor when it was bombed. And he and my mother decided that she would move to California. just in case. People were, I don't know, they were up against it in those days. Okay, we have an item from ABC News, and the caption on this picture says meadow in Jackson, Wyoming. That's how it was labeled. I wouldn't have said Jackson. I would have said Jackson Hole, because the valley is called Jackson Hole. It's a depressed area in the mountains, and fairly big depressed area. I think it's 6-7 miles across, so it's pretty big. Jackson is the town, so I don't see any buildings. Anyway, go ahead.
The headline here is Trump's budget cuts and the environment.
President Trump's first 100 days included a wide range of attacks on environmental and climate initiatives. His proposed budget does the same. The document looks to curtail or cut billions of dollars for everything from drinking water to clean energy to national parks and emergency management. And again, I see the cuts, but I don't see the thought behind them. I just see cutting is good, and it doesn't matter what comes aside from the fact that we're saving the money that would be going there. And if it costs money to do that, that's not taken into account.
Right, but where is this? Yeah, what? Yeah, there's no
thought behind it.
Well, yeah, there's no thought behind it, and there's no thought, and also about why you're doing it, but also what consequence, what happens.
You don't have the consequences. When you're going to say Empire Wind is not going to be built, you have to think about what the downside of that is, in addition to the fact that you've got this goal that is 100% political, as far as I can see, and without thought to the consequences.
Yes, correct.
Okay, should we go on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let us go on.
This picture is a polling place in Australia, and there you can see people going in the background, way back in the buildings. But the signs basically are there. This is from Renew Economy, which is an Australian publication.
So the headline here is Coalition Power Plant Nuked at Poll.
Yes. Labour's landslide election victory shows Australians have overwhelmingly rejected the coalition's nuclear energy plan, climate groups say. The plan proposed by the coalition was to build 7 nuclear reactors in Australia, which would have seen first operation in 2035. That's, I think, an optimistic.
It's very optimistic
Point of view from their position, and cost hundreds of billions of dollars. And that hundreds of billions of dollars, by the way, the Australian dollar is about 65 cents. So it's still hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah, it's still hundreds.
But this followed an election in Canada that also saw very similar results. And both elections were clearly influenced by Donald Trump. And the elections were reactions against Donald Trump to some degree, to a large degree. You have anything on that?
I just smile. I just have a smile. It's just, well, the people have spoken. Okay, all right.
Yeah, there was the coalition, I should explain. The Labor Party is what we in the United States would call the Liberal Party. What the Australians call the Liberal Party is what we in the United States would call the Conservative Party. And the Liberal Party had entered into a coalition with another party, actually a group of other parties, that are called the National Party. And they're kind of like, in Germany before the Second World War, they had the National Socialists. And that is a little bit of the flavor of what I see in the National Party. I hate to say it, but I think they're thoughtless. You know, it's whatever we think is good for the nation is what we're
Right.
doing. And it's not really what's good.
No. It's not about what's good, it's what we say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a picture of a Ford F-150 Lightning.
Yeah, this one was very interesting to read. How solar breakthroughs and this is from the Independent. How solar breakthroughs and electric vehicles can protect against catastrophic blackouts.
Some clean energy clean energy detractors tried to falsely blame the power outage in Spain on its reliance on renewable energy. One way to prevent blackouts is to have microgrids for buildings, and microgrids can be supported by electric vehicles such as the Ford F-150 Lightning. I absolutely agree with that. The problem in Spain, they're saying, look, Spain was getting 75% of its electricity from renewables. And that's, according to those guys, why the grid failed. And I don't know why the grid failed. Neither does the Spanish government yet, apparently. But one thing that we can be sure of is that calling it something that happened because of renewables is thoughtless.
I mean, but it's also what everybody, it's like the time, that's always when people blame renewables, is when there's a problem. There's no, you know, that's like the opening.
A couple of years ago, they had that winter storm in Texas.
Yep, and that's when that was used then too.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And they said in Texas, this was because the wind plants failed. Well, wind plants did fail. And the reason they failed was because they were put up without the protection that the turbines needed in cold weather. Because the people who put them up said, it's Texas, it never gets cold here.
Yeah.
What else failed? Natural gas failed big time because trace amounts of water in the natural gas turned to ice in their valves. So the plants just couldn't run. What else failed? Nuclear. There are 3 nuclear plants in Texas. One of them was down altogether because of that storm. And the reason was because critical infrastructure was frozen.
Yeah.
And they got out of this because of solar power. I don't know. But they had to spend a long time figuring that out. Okay. This statue, by the way, is a statue of justice. And it's not in the United States. And, you know, usually you have justice with the scales and the sword. Yeah. Well, I went looking for a statue of justice, and I came up with this one, which I like, but it is different. So this is from Clean Technica.
Yeah, so the headline here is new data on fossil fuel industry emissions could be pivotal in climate litigation.
Yes. Justin Mankin, an associate professor at Dartmouth College. I've been there. Didn't go to school there, but my father did. And Christopher Callahan, a postdoctoral researcher at Stanford University. How do you suppose they got together? Stanford's in California.
Maybe a conference. Isn't that where academics meet?
Yeah. Wrote a study published in the journal Nature. They show how they can connect big businesses and climate change in court. Now, this is important. I have a note here, which is the calculation is complex, and a person who wants to understand should probably go to the Nature paper, which, by the way, is linked by the Clean Technica article. So if you go to Clean Technica, you'll see a link to the Nature paper, but don't expect easy reading. I will say the whole area of science called attribution science was unknown until 2011, but it can be explained. And the example that I use is Hurricane Harvey, which went over Houston and stalled. And there were areas in that part of Texas where houses that were not even in 500-year flood zones got flooded.
Yeah.
And the reason was partly because the Gulf of Mexico, which, by the way, is the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
I learned that from my fourth grade teacher, Miss Strohecker. Scary name for a fourth grader. She was a very smart woman, and I'll tell you about her someday. But the waters in the Gulf of Mexico were very much warmer than normal, so of course they would evaporate faster. The air above the water was very much warmer than normal, so it would accept more water vapor into it. This thing that was like a sponge that was dripping, and you're not holding it tight, goes over land, and all of a sudden it hits cooler air there and just dumps all that water out. And this is what happens. And you can say, what was the likelihood that that house that was not in a 500-year flood zone was going to get flooded by a storm? And the answer to that is extremely small, and yet it happened. And the reason was because largely of climate change. And you can actually go into attribution and you can say the probability that this would happen is XYZ, and do calculations on that. Well, what I just explained is extremely simple compared to this paper, but they're saying we can show in court what the cost is, and the cost is unbelievably high. It's in the trillions of dollars, and these people are just getting away with it. And if you want to do an analogy on that, I'll say it's like your next door neighbor throwing trash in your backyard and then calling the police because your yard's a mess. And you try to get him to clean it up, and he says, it's not my problem.
Yeah, that sounds, yeah. That's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a picture of an oil rig.
Yes, we do.
And an item from ABC News.
Yeah, so oil prices dropped $2 with most Asian markets closed for holidays.
Okay, oil prices fell more than $2 a barrel after OPEC Plus group, the plus, by the way, is Russia, of oil-producing nations said it plans to increase output by 411,000 barrels a day on June 1st. U.S. crude oil is down about 17% for the year, and prices are at a point where many producers can no longer turn a profit. So what do you do in order to make things easy for those producers? You tell them to drill, baby, drill. I have a note here. It says, Trump is pushing for low gas prices. If he succeeds, the oil industry will suffer, as will the gas industry and coal mining. Again, it's what happened.
The numbers don't work. Like he's just like, oh well, price is low. Oh, also tax, like tariff. Like he's just like coming up with all these different things, but it's not like he's adding them together.
That's why we have people who sit down and do modeling.
Yeah, yes.
And so they can say, yeah, you raise tariffs at this amount, this is what happens.
So the people that press the plus button on the calculator, yeah. So the folks that can actually press the calculator buttons for him and tell him and show him the numbers, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Those folks, yeah.
Those ones. Okay, our next one is from Renews, and we have a picture of a monopile. This is the mast that will be have a wind turbine put on it. And I want to point out that at the point going from left to right where that monopile turns is yellow and then it stops and then from there it's white, there's a guy kind of next to it, under it sort of. He's tiny.
Oh yeah, I see him. I didn't see him before.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so here we have Steelwind rolls out its largest ever monopile.
Steelwind is celebrating a production milestone With the completion of its largest and heaviest monopile, Steelwind announced in February that it would invest 50 million euros in its Nordenham Blexen factory, in Germany to expand its capacity to meet increasing demand for offshore wind power. This is a big, these masts weigh over 1,000 tons, a lot of them. And they have ships that have cranes on them that can pick them up. Yeah. Okay. Go on?
Yeah, let's go
Okay, this one is interesting.
Yeah, yeah, this one's very interesting. So this is from Clean Technica, and the headline is How the World's Largest Electric Ferry Changes Maritime Electrification.
The launch of the electric ferry China Zorrilla to operate between Argentina and Uruguay represents a landmark event in maritime electrification commissioned by BUQBUS. Do you know how to pronounce that? BUQUEBUS?
BUQBUS.
I don't know. I'm going to say BUQBUS. This vessel is the largest battery electric passenger and vehicle ferry in the world. And I want to mention, I looked at that and I thought, China? Zorrilla? What does that mean? Does that mean it was designed in China? No, it doesn't. The name honors Concepcion China, nickname, Zorrilla, a beloved Uruguayan actress. The boat is a catamaran.
Okay.
Okay? And that's a big boat. And
Yeah.
if you look at the picture, you can see people over here. There's with what looks like a tent here, a pair of them, and it looks like there's some kind of ceremony going on. So this thing is a big. It's called a ferry boat, but I kind of suspect that it's properly a ship. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, May 6th.
Yeah.
And we have an item from Renews and a solar array.
Yeah, so the headline here, the headline here is World installed almost 600 gigawatts of solar power in 2024.
A record 597 gigawatts of solar power was installed in 2024, and growth could hit 1 terawatt per year by 2030, a report shows. The Solar Power Europe report shows that the amount of solar power installed in 2024 was 33% more than what was installed in 2023. In late 2024, the world hit 2 terawatts of total solar in operation, which means that almost a third of what was in operation at the end of 2024 had been installed that year. This is, we're ramping up.
Yeah, that's pretty fast. We're talking about how quick nuclear takes to get
quick. Yes. This is not the race between the tortoise and the hare. This is the race between the hare and the block of granite.
Yeah.
So it's nuclear power just takes forever. And there are people who are expecting small modular reactors to fit, in, but the problem is only one of them has been approved. And I mean one design. And going from that design being approved to having a factory which is able to turn these things out is not a trivial job. And then each one has to be cited, which means more approvals and huge amounts of money. And the nuclear industry is probably overly optimistic about everything.
Everything usually. Yeah.
Okay, we have an item from Clean Technica here. This blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
This is astonishing.
Yeah, I am fascinated by this. So the headline here is Global Ferry Electrification Accelerates. 70% of new orders go electric.
70% of the orders for ferry boats worldwide are for electric boats. 70%. That's not 17, that's 70. It is remarkable how fast maritime transportation is decarbonizing. Globally, 70% of ferries currently on order now feature electric drivetrains. About 15,400 ferries are operating around the world, and most operators have electric retrofit plans for existing vessels. This is, I was just blown away about this. You know, I don't know what to say. I know that the country that has the largest percentage of its ferry boats electric is Norway, which is not a big surprise because that's what the Norwegians do. They have the largest percentage of cars being sold that are electric, and you know, they have dates when you can't do city to city airplanes on gasoline anymore, or kerosene, or whatever the fuel is that they use. It's got to be electric. And this is important to them, because both of those, by the way, because they've got the fjords, and you can drive from a town on this side of the fjord to a town on that side of the fjord, but driving around, the towns might be only a mile away. But driving around, you might have to go 30 miles. And so that's a problem. Okay.
I thought this was very interesting because I also was thinking about just generally you're talking about also if you're out on the water, you might be talking about some sun. And so I can also imagine how some things we'll talk about later with solar technology is really interesting, and how that combining with the tidal, it's all kind of coming together with boats.
It is. And, you know, again, we could do this in the United States. We don't have a federal government that's particularly interested in that right now, but the way things are going in government, I have a feeling that there's going to be changes very soon. Okay, should I go on?
Yeah.
This is a picture of a solar array at NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, and an item from Colorado Public Radio.
So the headline here is 114 people laid off from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory.
At least 114 people were laid off at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, an email says. The cuts affected staffers in both research and operations sides of the lab. Staff cut included some at NREL headquarters in Golden, Colorado, and some were cut from places elsewhere. And this particular organization, I think, has saved American taxpayers a lot of money. But of course, when you just say we have to cut 10%, 50%, whatever we have to cut, and let people go without regard to whether they are doing something that reduces costs for taxpayers, that's what happens.
I wrote bad. That's my response to this. Is very bad. This is very, very bad for all parties, everybody. This is bad.
Yeah. And that's unfortunately what we've got. And, you know, I don't know. I just don't know. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, May 7th. We have 3 items left and 10 minutes to talk about them, so we've got lots of time.
Yeah. So here, this is from Renews, and the headline here is Welsh government invests £2 million in tidal power.
Yeah, the Welsh government completed that. By the way, is a picture of Hydro Wing's turbines, and that's not a big turbine. That's actually a fairly small turbine. The Welsh government completed a $2 million equity investment in tidal energy in the firm Inyanga, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's certainly not a Welsh name. Maritime Energy Group. The investment will fund improvements in the hydro wing turbines, enabling them to test turbines, designed to produce up to 60% more energy in real sea conditions. Wales has an interesting coast. If you look at the south of Wales, you have the Severn Estuary. And the Severn Estuary is a lot like the Bay of Fundy, where you have huge differences between high tide and low tide. Bristol is a city that is there, and if they can get these turbines to stay in place as the water moves in and out, which might not be all that easy to do, they could generate a lot of electricity from them. And the time that it takes for the tide to switch from one direction to the other is relatively short. Aside from that very predictable time, you have a pretty steady amount of electricity that is produced. And so you could have a battery to back this up, but it would not have to be a big battery. And it's highly reliable power for those who feel that a need for baseload power. It's should make them feel a little bit better. I don't think we need baseload power at all, but that's just me having spent years on this. What can I say? Okay, next.
Let's go on, yeah.
This is an interesting graph.
Yeah.
Things grow slowly and then they don't. They grow fast.
So this is from Clean Technica,
Yes.
and the headline is U.S. Sustainable Aviation Fuel Production Takes Off as New Capacity Comes Online.
Now, we were talking about aviation fuel earlier when we were talking about lignin. Production of sustainable aviation fuel is growing in the United States as new capacity comes online. The U.S. production of other biofuels, which the Energy Information Administration uses to capture the sustainable aviation fuel in its petroleum supply monthly, was approximately doubled from December 2024 to February 2025. That's a couple of months, and it doubles. Well, because they've got a factory coming online. I don't know what to say about aviation except that people in our society have a real belief in their own entitlement.
Yeah.
And if I want to go to the UK, I should be able to fly from an airport in Brattleboro to an airport in Plymtree, Devon, which has a population of 600.
I think part of it too is so much not understanding, but also not being willing or not having imagination to try to understand.
Yeah.
But I think it's just immediately not wanting to kind of try to understand.
To try to understand. A number of years ago, there were a couple of companies, and I should look and see what became of them, that were floating the idea of returning to blimps or zeppelins or something like that to go across the ocean, which is, it's really easy to do that in one direction. It's not quite so easy in the other, but it really is kind of easy. You have to take advantage of winds or avoid high winds if that is how it happens. And yes, it takes a lot of hours, which means that in the old days when one of those vehicles went across the ocean, people would expect to sleep on board and they'd have beds to sleep in. These things were supposed to be very comfortable, and they were also expensive, but in the days that they were used a lot, people didn't go by plane at all. But I think we should think in terms of slower transportation.
I would agree with you, but that's not what's going to happen. That's literally not what's going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Well,
It's just as the same belief that I have that we need to conserve and dial back our consumption
yes.
of electricity or just energy in general, and be aware of what our consumption actually is, and
Yes.
be able to do all of that. Yeah, that's not happening either. I mean, that's
We're going to have to do things, though, and
I-
some of them are things that people haven't imagined or thought about.
No, yeah, they're just, yeah, they're not considering. They're just saying, oh, well, these are the other, additional, ways that we can use more items, when it's, well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
not gonna
don't
survive
know,
it,
I don't know where
probably.
we're going. I know that if we run out of food, people are going to be very hungry,
Yes.
and people will be much more inclined to think about planting a garden. And if we run out of gasoline, people won't be able to drive their cars. And, they will be much more inclined to think about taking public transportation if the public transportation is there to able to do it.
Well, it may not be there because it may be completely defunded, and then, sorry, I was, oh my God.
I told people when Donald Trump was elected that I thought that he might decide that because he didn't even have 50% of the vote, which he didn't. He didn't have a majority of the vote. He had enough vote to win the Electoral College, but they've been talking about a mandate. He hasn't got a mandate. There's no such thing as a 49% mandate. But my feeling was that he hated the United States because it didn't back him the way that he wanted it to, and so he decided that he was going to destroy the United States, and that's what I'm seeing. I shouldn't be talking about this. Okay, Clean Technica.
Yeah, so this one is all right, there were two Clean Technicas on this one page. So the headline here is Aviation Professionals Call for a New Emissions Flight Plan.
Yeah, a newly formed group of aviation professionals, we're back to aviation, with the name Call Aviation to Action, that's the name of the group, sees danger ahead for their industry. The number of people flying commercially is projected to double by 2024, and aviation's effects on climate change are already too great. And I agree that they're too great, and as I said, I think we should be looking at possible alternatives.
I mean, also what's not here is there aren't pilots that want to be flying because the numbers just don't work. The jobs are just, they're not paying what they used to pay, and so they're just not a great job. So you also, if you're talking about doubling the amount of flights, with who? Who's going to be flying them? Who's going to be working on those airplanes if it's not attractive to someone to spend that time learning how to fly a plane? Then
Yes.
or it's not, or you don't have as many restrictions, and so they have to lower the bar for pilots. It's all what do you do during when things are falling and everything is in chaos? How do you?
You have the current system of planes going across the ocean, fueled with lignin-sourced sustainable aviation fuel, carrying a lower number of people than they carry today. You have, additionally to that, flying in entirely different paths, people on slower blimp-like things, people who are willing to pay less than half as much and take an extra 10 hours or 20 hours to cross the ocean.
Yeah.
And you have people who decide that they don't need to go to Europe. They can stay home.
I mean, I always think about when I'm looking at my travel going to one place. So say I'm traveling to Europe or wherever, and sure, there's the quickest way. There's also the least comfortable way. There's the way that lets you have a night in some other place that sounds nice, that is fine and still maybe a little bit cheaper than the direct flight. So,
there
having
are a bunch of ways to do this.
Yeah. So thinking about like you can make a choice.
Yes, that's right. And
Part of that.
I don't know. I flew across the ocean twice in 1962, and neither time was at all fun. It was jet lag both ways.
Yeah. I don't know that flying is fun.
Flying is not fun. It really isn't. And I have a feeling that there are ways that it could be better. So let's think about that. Certainly, if I had to go to Europe for a summer and a ship were available, I would be thinking about going by ship, even though it would take 8, 9, 10 days.
I did consider that one time when I was coming back, was taking a ship, but I had a job, so I couldn't do it on
Part of
online.
the problem is that the ship we're over time. The ship has a carbon footprint that's greater than an airplane. Anyway, see you next time. Bye-bye. Oh, we should say have an enjoyably civilized week.
Oh,
Whoop, it went off.
it went off.
There we go.
Have an enjoyable ass.
Okay.